I'd like to move us along now to our next presenter, which is Maddie. And Maddie's going to talk about assistive or adaptive technology. So over to you. Thanks, Maddie.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Renee and Robin, for that introduction, and Connor. So my name is Maddie. I'm one of the project officers with I to the Future, and I'm going to be talking today about becoming an expert in your own technology and the importance of having good technology skills. We've just touched on it very briefly, and we're not going to teach you in this session. This is not necessarily a class, but we will be posing some questions and scenarios for you to consider if your tech skills are up to scratch. And Renee did mention that there may be some barriers, and we don't want to give recruiters or managers a reason not to hire you. We want to be the expert in our own technology and take what we can control. So knowing how to use your assistive technology in the most efficient and effective way is important for the workforce. And learning how to use your technology is something that is in your control. So I'm going to ask you to reflect on your relationship with your assistive technology. Firstly, if you know how to use your current technology to its full capacity to comfortably access common office software. And secondly, if there's other tech options that may be more suitable for you or the roles that you're applying for. And then finally, we will point you in the direction of where you can go to upskill or learn more about assistive technology options. So most of us will have heard of and probably used in some way something of the Microsoft Office suite, likely to be Microsoft Word, which is a very common program in almost every organization and education provider for written document production. With that being said, that it is one of the most common programs, it's important to know how to use your assistive technology to its full capacity and how to use all the functions of Microsoft Word. So if you're a JAWS or a Zoom text reader user, do you know how to check the font size and style in Word using the shortcut key? It's a quick and efficient way to access that information that we may not be able to see. Do you know how to do this in Zoom text if you're a Zoom text user? So that's just a question to consider, that there are sometimes quick and efficient ways to do things that we may not be using to its full capacity, which is what we need in an office environment. Microsoft Excel is another very common data storage program. I've come across it in my professional experience for storage of customer information, to calculate costs, budgeting, forecasting, to name a few. And cited or not cited, Excel is a big program to learn. And we don't want to wait to find out when we get the job that we need to upskill to confidently use a program such as Excel. For example, in Excel, do you know how to use the define name function? And this function will tell you which column you're in, and which is very important when you're working with a large spreadsheet. And again, this is a shortcut that you can use in JAWS, and I will invite Connor to speak about that soon because he has used that function within it. So the other program that I'll quickly touch on is Microsoft Outlook, and that's an email program, and we've all used email some degree to get into this meeting today onto Zoom because that was shared to you by email. But there's many functions and usability features within Outlook that we need to be comfortable with before stepping into the job. Do we know how to use Microsoft Outlook in particular to reply all or send emails individually to groups or BCC someone into an email? Perhaps you know how to set up your out of office in your email. And these are all really common things that we will do in an office environment that everybody needs to know how to do, and we need to learn how to use our assistive technology to do these things. So if you answered no to some of these questions, that might be a sign that there's a need for upskilling. or if you feel that there are gaps in your knowledge, that in a professional workspace, there would be a huge learning curve for your assistive technology. Whether you're fully sighted or not, when you start a new job, there is a lot to learn. And we don't want to make it harder on ourselves by having to learn a new role and learn how to use our assistive technology more efficiently. So our message is, don't wait to upskill. This is something that you can do today, tomorrow, next month. This is something that's in your control. The other thing that I would quickly like to touch on is some people have a condition that's unlikely to change. And other people, some of us will have a condition that is likely to change over time. And this means that in time, we will need to reassess our assistive technology and ask, is this technology still meeting my current needs? You may be using a zoom text or a magnification technology at the moment, but that may change, and there will be a time where we might need to move to JAWS or another program that will help us live our life in a more efficient way. And the message is not to resist it and to reach out to people to find that support. Technology, mainstream or assistive technology, it's evolving every day. Perhaps there's been upgrades to the type of assistive technology that you're using. Are you aware of what your assistive technology options are? So to follow on from that, really common places that you can get assistance is Vision Australia. We've mentioned them before. Guide Dogs Australia or within your state will be able to assist you with some of these things. Using your network and asking people who are blind or vision impaired that you know who are currently working, and they might be able to share some valuable experience and what they learned. If you are currently working with Job Access, you can request to be put in touch with someone for your specific modification training. And finally, there are independent services registered with the NDIS who can help you with your assistive technology. And I mentioned before that I will be asking Connor to speak about his experience using Excel and the Microsoft Office suite. So I'd like to invite Connor back in to quickly share a little bit about your experience there.
Thanks very much, Patty. Yeah, so look, mine is an anecdote. So again, as I kind of said in the beginning, I thought I knew how to use Excel as an example or Microsoft Word enough. And I did for going to university or school or whatever, but not really probably as much in an office setting. And, the realities is for myself, my highest likelihood of getting work is going to be in an office. I used to want to be an electrician and stuff like that. And there are obviously things that I can do, but my highest chance of success, at least the way I see it for myself, is to be in an office space. So an example with Excel, when I used to have to count all the different cells, maybe for like a survey response, and sometimes I'd be counting 300 lines of Excel and I'd get lost in it. And I didn't know whether I was in the first name column or the last name column or the email column. And that's kind of where that defined name thing came in that Maddie mentioned, because I could be hundreds of columns down, hundreds of rows in, and I'd still know where I was because JAWS would tell me that I was like whereabouts I was on the page. But the other thing with it was I would sit there and hit the arrow button and go 1, 2, 3, counting each row. And I didn't realize that there's a formula I could have used that I could have just punched in, for example, A1 plus B1 equals C1, and that would have counted it for me. So that turned my, hour or two's long work into a 30-second operation. And I was about 2 years into my job before I realized that. So I was taking so much longer to just even do my work because I wasn't aware of that. And that was something that that I'm ashamed to say I could have known that before I actually started looking for work. And now I can. So, if I'm ever looking for work, I can say that I'm an intermediate Microsoft Office user instead of just a beginner, because that kind of stuff matters. So that's kind of just an anecdote I thought I'd share. So thanks, Maddie.
No, and that's really, really important and helpful to know about that, especially being, lost in a spreadsheet when there is a quick and easy formula that you could do that anybody can do if we know how to do it. And that's in our control, that we can seek the assistance to learn how to use our technology to be able to do all these things on a computer. We're just doing it in a slightly different way. So our next topic will be, Connor will be speaking about orientation and mobility to and around the office. But before we do go there, I'm just wondering if anyone from the I to the Future team has anything else they'd like to add. And if not, does anybody have any questions?
Actually, I have a comment. It's Fiona.
Hi, Fiona.
I just wanted to say that at the recent BCA Inform, I can't remember if it was Ramona Mandy or Kate Begley that said that with assistive technology, it's really not helpful to compare yourself with everybody else and to think about all the things you don't know, but to try and compare yourself with what you knew previously. So think about what you might have learned in the last month and what you could do last month compared to what you can do next month, and try and see progress that way rather than always thinking, look, I still don't know all these other things. So just to get, because it can feel very overwhelming. So just to get a sense that you are progressing rather than, you haven't made it to the finish line yet.
Thank you, Fiona. That's really, really important. And we're always learning against, with ourselves and comparing our successes, not against anyone else. That's really, really important. Thank you.
It's Robin speaking. I'll just quickly add that sort of along the same lines as that comment that Fiona just made, that mastering your assistive technology is never over. Every day there's an opportunity to learn something new, because there's always JAWS gets updated, iOS gets updated, etc. So you need to always be on the lookout for new ways of utilizing your assistive technology. And as Maddie mentioned before, there's one-on-one training that you can do, but there's online forums, there's various email groups that you can join. Freedom Scientific has had some really fantastic free webinars on all aspects of using JAWS and Fusion and Zoom Text. Apple Viz website does as well, and they're all free. So there's lots of resources that we can access that can be continually developing our skills in the use of our assistive technology.
Thanks, Robin. Cynthia, you have your hand up. Do you have a question for Maddie?
Not really a question, just a comment. Just to sort of make it, if you like, a little bit more in realistic of maybe some of the other jobs we could do in offices. I thought I'd mention what I used to do, which a lot of people used to think, oh my God, you did that. I worked customer service in a clothing wholesaler. So I not only input orders and took calls and things like that, but I also used my, color detect for my clothing and everything to actually be able to detect over 10,000 different products and styles and things like that. So if people are sort of thinking that maybe working in an office is going to be boring, there are some really cool things you can do working in an office. And I am legally blind and just used my narrator and magnifier on the screen, a big screen for my catalogue, and was able to work in fashion. So it's just something I thought people might like to hear, that it's something different.
That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that with us, Cynthia. And Connor, I think you can give me some Excel lessons, because it seems like you've got it all wrapped up. And on that note, I could always use some Excel lessons. And on that note, I'd like to hand over to Connor, and he's going to take us through our topic 3 today, which is about mobility. So over to you. Thanks, Connor.
Definitely not. I definitely do not know everything about Excel. I don't know if there's anyone on earth who knows absolutely everything about Excel, even Microsoft. But thank you. So look, my section is the last section, and then we can open for any other questions that anybody might have about any of the sessions or anything that we've kind of spoken about. But mine is really about orientation and mobility. And I guess where this came from was, again, when I was first looking for work, I was looking for work in places that weren't likely to get me the work I was after. So, you know, like I live in Western Sydney, and when I was looking for my first job, I wasn't willing to travel maybe more than 10 or 15 minutes from my house because I wasn't very proficient with the cane at that point, or I was maybe to my local shops, but that's very different to being on peak hour on a train. But then at the same time, here I was looking for work, but then I had narrowed my area to 10 or 15 minutes from my house, which is fine. But that meant that I needed to change. I either needed to kind of go, well, okay, I have to be okay with what's within this area, and that may not be what I'm after. And is that okay? Or did I have to push my comfort zone? And, you know, my first job, I ended up working in Strathfield, for anyone who's familiar with Sydney. So I was about 40 kilometers from my home. And I would never have imagined that that was going to be the very first place I would travel to, because that was just a daunting prospect for me. But I got to the point where I just needed work. So as much as I really didn't want to be on a train traveling that far, if I wanted to take the opportunity, I had to kind of grab that. And if I didn't, then that's fine, because you know, everybody is where they're at. And, you know, my comfort zone has shifted over the years. But it is something that I guess we have found in our discoveries over the last year running this program, that, you know, sometimes you might be looking for work, or you might be wanting work, but if there's none nearby and you're maybe not comfortable traveling, again, that's fine. But that may force us to kind of reconsider, well, am I willing to push this comfort zone because it'll be worth it? Or if not, again, that's fine. But then what work is nearby? You know, just as an example, as we all know, like CBDs or central business districts, they're where a lot of the jobs are. But, you know, if I'm unwilling to travel to those areas for work, then I'm really cutting myself off from a massive amount of potential options. And as we all know, sadly, you know, being blind, our options sadly are or often do seem a little bit more limited, or there's more obstacles in our way. And so again, it wasn't easy, but that thing of having to, or for myself, having to realize that I don't need to choose to make it any harder on myself than it already is. So I suppose it's just that thing of emphasizing, okay, there's one thing to get to your local shops with a cane, but would you feel that same confidence to jump on a peak hour train and travel 30 kilometers around thousands of people? Because they're two very different skills. And then that just might impact your search, because you might go, okay, well, no, I'm not willing to do that, so I need to search for something closer to home. And is the kind of job I want going to be within that area? Yes, no, you know, and then that might just help you kind of sort out your thinking about what's actually likely, because there's nothing worse. I often find with job searching, there's nothing worse than wasted energy. And sometimes when you're looking for work and trying to get work, it can be just, you know, endless amounts of applying and trying, and generic nonsense emails about you've been unsuccessful or whatever, and you don't really know why. But you know, you don't want to be wasting energy. At least for myself, I definitely don't want to be wasting any energy on something that's not going to be a good option that I'm willing to take up. And again, those kinds of things can be taught. So, you know, Vision Australia has an orientation and mobility section. So does Guide Dogs, for example. And it might just be thinking, well, okay, as an example, Parramatta is my closest CBD. There's probably a good likelihood of jobs there. So maybe I should learn before I even get work how to navigate through Parramatta train station. Because then you're not going to be on the front foot if you do find work, because the last thing you want is to have to get rid of, you know, not get used to all the new that's going to happen when you do hopefully find work, but then have to travel in a way that maybe you never considered before, because you don't want any more stress. You know, none of us want any more stress than we have. And I guess the other side of this too is in the actual workplace itself. So a big part, sadly, again, and we know the perceptions are wrong, but for a lot of workers, they have this preconceived idea that if you're blind or vision impaired, you're going to be less safe in the workplace. And the evidence doesn't actually suggest that that's even true. But, being able to get around with good mobility skills is a good way of putting maybe the interviewer or your bosses, if you do get work, at ease, because you don't need to give people who may already be skeptical, sadly, any more ammunition. So getting around a workplace safely using a cane, I know myself, when I first lost my vision, I had a period of time where I thought I was getting away with traveling without a cane, because I didn't like the idea of a cane, for example. And, until I found myself in the middle of a road and realized that my eyes couldn't be trusted and almost got hit by a bus, as an example. So, but, I was around the corner from my own home. So the last thing I needed was to find myself 40 kilometers from home and then realize I was maybe taking too much of a punt on what my eyes were doing. And obviously that kind of stuff depends on eye conditions people have. That might be more or less relevant to some people. But all of these things play a factor, because you want to be able to get to work, to your interviews, to get home safely, and you don't want it to be any more stressful than it is. Yeah, just some things to consider. So I just thought it was worth sharing some of that. So as I said, if you need any assistance with any of that kind of stuff, there's no problem with getting in touch with Guide Dogs or Vision Australia or any other O&M provider and saying, I wanted to learn how to get here because I'm trying to find work, and this area might be a good spot to try and find it. So yeah, does anybody have any questions on, I guess, what I've just spoken about, or any place? Oh, actually, sorry, before I go to that, I also forgot to say, don't forget as well with all of this, if you're on the NDIS. So as part of my NDIS plan, I have a goal to be, when I'm not working, to be finding work. And that might make the difference between the type of funding that I get. So I might get a bit of extra funding in my capacity building budget because the NDIS knows that I'm going to be calling Guide Dogs to get some instructor training because I'm trying to get those skills up and ready. So again, sometimes we don't think about that when it comes to the NDIS and our plans and our goal setting, but that might help and use some of these skills that I guess that we've spoken about today. So then you're not financially set back by trying to kind of get yourself job ready. So just another thing to consider. So yeah, with that said, if anybody has any questions either about what I've spoken about or maybe just in general and you haven't had a chance to ask a question yet, please speak now or forever hold your peace.
Connor,
Cynthia, you have your hand up. You have a question for Connor?
Hold the audio now unmuted.
Well, I've got a question for just a general question.
Yes, Riley.
Could someone email could someone email me the website for this meeting of the recording?
Yes, Riley, absolutely. We can do that.
Thank you.
Cynthia, did you have another question, or is your hand up from the previous
No,
session?
it was probably more just a statement. I actually got a job without even checking where it was located. So I accepted defeat for 8 years and I went by cab to and from work every day. So, I mean, I know that obviously we want a paycheck, but maybe that's something, if it's not easily accessible, don't necessarily say no to it either. Because obviously, yes, there was a cost of cab to get to work and that, but I rationaled it that everyone else pays for petrol and car maintenance.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And, and there's always, it might be, even that, the first couple of months until you're maybe able to find other arrangements that you might have to do that, but you're getting paid, know? So, it's not necessarily the end of the road.
No.
Before we finish up today's session, is there any other final questions from anyone in the room today?
Olga.
Yes, Khan.
No, it's Sue.
Khan, you have your hand up?
I don't know who's going first.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, my thing was, question was more for Renee, and it wasn't even a question. It was just to clarify something that she said about the DES providers. Basically, I'm with a DES provider, but I'm assuming I've also been applying for my own jobs without the DES provider knowing. I'm assuming that even though I'm with a DES provider, I can and indeed should still be applying for my own jobs.
Renee, would you like to respond to Khan's question? May not be able to hear me. Robin, would you be available to?
Wait, could you hear me? Hello?
Yes, can hear you,
Yes.
Renee.
Hello?
Thank you.
Sorry, guys. Khan, absolutely. You've absolutely got all the right in the world to take hold of that and be proactive in your job search. So yes, whilst and I can say the same thing about myself. Prior to landing my job with BCA, I was with a employment consultant, multiple actually, that were, you know, finding interviews for me, but I still looked for work for myself. So absolutely, you're the expert in your own life. So take charge of it, and please, by all means, don't wait for it to land in your lap. Go and find something.
No, because for example, like I've been applying for all these jobs, and I always find it strange because when I talk to my DES provider, they never ask me what I'm doing or whether I'm applying for jobs or anything, and I never obviously tell them. I just go ahead and apply, but I just find it, and I just wanted to check. It's like I think they just think that I'm waiting for them to find me a job. Like,
well, I think that's speaks a lot about you. You know, I mean that's the kind of the purpose of today's session, is that it's not about waiting for the job to land in your lap. It's about going out and finding it. So no, you absolutely have no contract with your DES provider at all. You absolutely have every right in the world to go out and look for work for yourself. And I would 100% recommend that you do that.
you know, because what I'm doing is mostly like my DES provider. It's like I'm looking for my own stuff if they can help out where they can, and then also like if they, you know, and find any opportunities for like work experience in the meantime or that sort of thing. That's mostly what I'm using, if you will, them for, like anything like that. And then the other thing I was just wondering was, or wanted to check or think, given that you said it's like really competitive and stuff, basically for us being blind or visually impaired, even though it's wrong, we've actually got a higher bar. We have to be more competitive to make them not forget that we're blind, but see past the blindness. And
no, absolutely
can't. Make a better impression.
I totally understand what you're saying, and I would recommend that you would maybe go onto the E2F website and listen to the podcasts that we've popped on the website with respect to job readiness. But also to, I don't know what state you're in, but maybe to contact the E2F team and have a chat.
I'm in WA.
Oh, me too. So
yeah.
Yeah,
I think we've actually met before on the job readiness workshops.
Oh, so you've been on you've done an EOI? Okay, good.
Yep.
Oh, good. All right, good. So let's contact each other that way through email and have a chat about your resume and what you're looking for. And
yeah, I've actually submitted my expression of interest. Sidebar. I don't know. We probably have to end the session. Sidebar, but yeah, I applied.
No.
Perhaps we can arrange for Renee and Khan, Renee, for you two to have an email exchange to find out where Khan's currently sitting. Thanks, Renee. Thank you, awesome. Khan. I'd like to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. It's been lovely to see you all again. So many familiar faces in the room today. If anyone has any further questions arising from today's session, please feel free to reach out to the IDA Future team, and you can do that by email at bca@bca.org.au,